Good morning. Before we go into our program, Jen, Gabi, and Jaydene will give a territorial acknowledgement.
Good morning. We would like to begin by acknowledging that McGill University is located on unceded Indigenous lands. The Ganegehaga Nation is recognized as the custodians of the lands and waters on which we gather. Tiohtià:ke, or Montreal, is historically known as a gathering place for many First Nations. Today it is home to a diverse population of Indigenous and other peoples. So many events these days start out like that, and to talk about why we do land acknowledgements and why they are not enough, I'd like to introduce Jaydene Lavallie, who will be joining us for the next 2 days and bringing her critical perspective to the work we do, specifically in the Justice and Decolonization Working Group. So, yay! Woo. So Jaydene is a Two-Spirit Michif Cree woman with mixed French, Scottish, and Swedish heritage. Her family is from Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan. She currently lives in Dish with One Spoon territory, also known as Hamilton, and she spends most of her efforts on anti-extractive and land defense struggles, but also has dedicated herself to defending her city against gentrification, fighting patriarchy inside and outside organizing circles, and pushing for animal liberation. As an anarchist, she maintains the importance of grassroots organizing and supports a diversity of tactics, prioritizing direct action and mutual aid as a way to bring about collective liberation. So Jaydene will explain more about land acknowledgements and why they're not enough.
Thank you, Jen. So thanks for that introduction. Other relevant things I would say, because I'm speaking here to a bunch of academics, is that I got my undergrad from Wilfrid Laurier University and have, as of yet, decided not to go back for any further post-secondary for a variety of reasons that we may get into in the course of the next 2 days. But when I graduated, the first thing I did was I worked at the OPIRG for like 3 years. And in that role as an Indigenous woman at the university, it became very clear around that time the school was very interested in doing land acknowledgement workshops for staff and faculty. That's okay, don't worry about it. For me to be giving land acknowledgements all over the place. And within a period of a few short years, I decided that was completely useless. Because not only had the school adopted their own land acknowledgement that was now at the bottom of every statement they put out and every header of every email that was sent, but the actual words and actions behind it weren't really being met. And also during that time and during that process, which as we know, establishing land acknowledgements and those kind of protocols were kind of a call, like a response to the calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I also became pretty critical of reconciliation as a Canadian project. And that's something we most definitely will talk about today if you're around me. I'm critical of it because I believe that doing land acknowledgements right now is simply acknowledging the history of colonialism without writing it, and that the guidelines of reconciliation don't actually offer a framework in order to pursue true reconciliation, which to me would be a decolonial effort to return land, to return sovereignty to people, because there is no sovereignty without land. And so I think they fall short, and I think that while we're doing land acknowledgements, that's a great thing, but it's completely meaningless if it's not attached to actual action, support, and on-the-ground solidarity with Indigenous folks. So I actually stopped doing those workshops, and I started doing other workshops, actually with Jen recently, about why I think reconciliation is not enough, why I think it falls short, and why I think what we need to be doing is pushing for a much wider and more radical transformation of settler-colonial relations here. So with that, I'll just end it there. But I'll hand it back to Jen, and we have one issue we just want to bring light to at the beginning of this so that we can kind of put that a little bit into practice.
So there's this push to go beyond symbolic actions of land acknowledgement. So we'd like to let you know that the people we mentioned earlier, the Ganegehaga, there's ongoing struggles over land, including right now it's the 7th day of a hunger strike in Genesatake. This is the place of the land dispute in Oka in 1990, and it's ongoing. And this hunger strike is to raise awareness and to put pressure on the government. The demand is for a moratorium on land development until the contested land, the territory is, the contested land is resolved. So there's many actions we can take today as a community. One is there's a petition going around you can sign. Two, they're asking people to call their MLAs and MPs and put pressure for this moratorium. So people have been calling for days around Montreal, all kinds of organizations, so you can call. You can come to us today to ask for what the numbers are, what you should say, and if you call your MP or MLA. And also we're collecting donations today. We're going to put the jar on the table there. Please feel free to make a donation, and we're going to get it to the Ellen Gabriel and the other leaders of the Longhouse in Ganasitake who are organizing around this this land dispute. So those are some ways we could take this symbolic action, make it material. So thank you.
Thank you, Jaydene and Jen. Welcome, everybody. This is a great event for most of us here in this room who've been involved in this program for a number of years, and it's great. It's a kind of a community. Almost everybody knows everybody else, and it's really a wonderful feeling to be here with you all. So just a few introductory remarks. This is being live streamed and recorded, right? So you're informed now. I don't know quite what to do with that, but maybe avoid certain behaviors, I guess, is the idea. Right? Okay, so I just want to talk about how this program came about. So when I was director of the environment program at in the School of Public Affairs at the University of Maryland, I was fortunate enough to hire Herman Daly from the World Bank. Herman, it's known to most of you who've studied ecological economics, particularly Josh, who's co-authored a textbook with him, was maybe the leading figure in ecological economics in that period. And he had had a long-standing critique with Robert Solow and other people in the mainstream, and he had never received a reply to any of his critiques. Their technique was to stonewall anybody who opposed them. And when I moved to McGill in 1998, I found that ecological economics was marginalized at best. And once in the formerly frozen North, I got to know Peter Victor and Ellie Perkins better, and also John Erickson and Josh Farley at UVM. So I've come to call this group the Disgruntled Five, right? So I don't know if Ellie knew that she was one of that distinguished group, but people who were systematically and deeply dissatisfied with the current direction of society and particularly the economic framework in which society has become immersed and regretfully is the main lodestone we use for thinking about the future. It occurred to us, the Disgruntled Five, that ecological economics was in danger of going extinct, and that neoclassical economics would carry the day by default. This seemed to me to be a clear and present danger to life's commonwealth. The wholly instrumental view of nature and the growth imperative would soon digest and defecate the world I love. We met and resolved not to go down by default. We aim to educate 40 to 60 people in the basics of ecological economics and to confer PhD degrees on them where appropriate. Suzanne Moore gave us a needed grant, some needed money for grant writing. And Jeff Garver unleashed his formidable training as a lawyer in writing compelling text and keeping an orderly process intact. Alejandra Zaga Mendez was just an amazing ability to help this project get going, to plan it, to control the really massive information involved. And I think our final grant proposal was well over 150 pages. So Taylor Ricketts, who's head of the Gund Institute in Vermont, also joined us from time to time and offered important insights on how to get through the complicated system in which we were then embedded. So it took us 3 times to make it, right? We said it got rejected once because they didn't like our letter of intent. Another time, they liked our letter of intent, but they didn't have any money to give us. So on number 3 try, we did it. And I think, Jeff can correct me if I have this number wrong, we were 8 in all of Canada in that competition. So anyway, and I remember kind of a somewhat panicked phone call with John when we told him that we'd gotten the grant. He said, "Oh my goodness, now we're going to have to do all the work." Right, so that was certainly right. So thanks for joining us today as a 6-year effort draws to a close. Today and tomorrow we offer a taste of what we have learned together. It is especially appropriate that this event is at McGill, where Frederick Soddy, a very important figure in the development of ecological economics, where Frederick Soddy worked with Rutherford to ground the theory of the atom near the beginning of the 20th century. So we are trying to reground economics in a conception, a up-to-date conception of the evolution of the universe. Anyway, welcome. Thank you very much for coming. I think John Erickson is going to talk to us. Ellie, sorry. Yes, sorry. Yeah, me, Ellie, and John in that order. Right?
So it is wonderful to be in a room with all of you, people who have been working together for such a long time on this project. And I would just like to say that Peter Brown is the one who has initiated this and kept it going from the beginning. And he's brought his formidable grant writing skills and his passion, right, to doing this project. My own connection and commitment to this is really around two kind of interrelated things, which are, number one, what is left out of neoclassical economics, what's left out of econometrics, what's left out of government statistics usually, and all of the pieces of unpaid work, but also ecological inputs, and also services that deal with the outputs of the traditional, of what we know as the economy. Those things are hard to measure. They happen in an elegant set of systems that allow for multitasking and for intelligent integration of human activities with the activities of the rest of the ecosystem and those of non-human living things. And neoclassical economics, as we know very well, is not good and often refuses to try to get a hold of that. I think economics sees itself as something that's apart from this other complicated, elegant, beautiful, systemic environment in which the economy sits. And so really the problem is, as I see it, the problem is the prioritization of a neoclassical economics viewpoint in policy circles, governance circles, and other circles, because it's a simple model and it purports to tell you the bottom line. Therefore, you don't have to think about what you're doing. Just follow the bottom line. Go ahead and make that decision. But you know, what ecological economics highlights is the very short-sighted and, in fact, tragic and unjust results that come from doing that kind of, making policy in that way. And so that what that has led us to, I think many of us who have been thinking about this for a while, and that includes everybody in this room pretty much, right, is that governance systems are really at the heart of the issue. It's governance systems that rely on a neoclassical bottom line to make their decisions that need overhaul, and that need questioning, and that need revisioning and rebuilding. And so the piece about, or the importance of decolonization is exactly in pulling in this other question about the injustice and the wrongs that have flown from the imposition of Western-style governance systems on traditional ways of doing things that were thousands of years old and very elegant in their sustainable processes. And so the challenge that we're now facing, which is the challenge of climate change, but it's also a challenge of of global equity, and it's a challenge of local equity as well, is a challenge of deciding together somehow, figuring out a way to move into an era where we can govern ourselves more sustainably, differently, and where we can figure out how to make amends for the injustices that have been done to indigenous peoples and their governance systems, and try to walk together somehow into a future that allows the resurgence of sustainable systems without sacrificing some of the good things that people have come to expect from their economies, like maybe healthcare, or universal education, but that already existed, or universal food supply and poverty reduction, but that already existed. We need to revisit, I think, what our priorities are, and rebuild governance systems that will really work. So that is my commitment to this project, has always been my commitment to what we're trying to do. And I hope that my university, York University in Toronto, will be able to continue its participation in ongoing work on this, because we bring so many students who already have passion into our student-directed graduate programs. So thank you. I don't want to talk too long. John.
Okay. Well, welcome again, and thank you, Peter and Ellie, for kicking things off, and thank you so much for giving us some action to do instead of an acknowledgement. My name's John Erickson. I think I know everyone from the University of Vermont, but I just want to say before we go into our speed talks that how proud I am of all of you. Working through a master's or a PhD is no small feat. Some of you are still in the depth of that experience. Some of you have actually hatched and have been born into the world as E4A graduates, so thank you so much for all your work. Reflecting on this event this morning, I'm actually realizing that with all of you, I'm part of a recent kind of third wave, a third attempt of doing exactly what Peter described. The first wave really kind of came out of the formalization of ecological economics in the late 80s, early 90s. When the Society for Ecological Economics was established, the journal, books, textbooks, etc. But there was no place you could go to study ecological economics. So Josh Farley and myself were disgruntled PhD students at Cornell together, and we had to kind of find ecological economics ourselves and pick and choose classes and be real pains in the butts to our professors as we were asked to be indoctrinated in this economic worldview that, speaking for myself and Josh, were very disgruntled about, and thought it didn't make a whole lot of sense to go to a science class and hear a worldview, go to a philosophy or an ethics class and hear a worldview, and go to an economics class and hear a completely diametrically opposed worldview. The second wave, I was fortunate to be, my first job out of grad school was hired at the economics department of Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute, where myself and John Gowdy and Sabine O'Hare, we had the crazy idea of creating a PhD program called ecological economics at the oldest engineering school in the United States. And we had some success. We were able to create upwards of 20 or so PhD students in ecological economics who called themselves ecological economics, who are now starting to create the foundation for a movement, especially within econ departments, to turn a tide. But it was short-lived. It was kind of an inspired vision of a few people rather than an inclusive vision of many. Those students went on and found jobs Not in North America. Many of them went on and found jobs at Leeds University, in Vienna, in Barcelona, in Australia, which is now where you see, this many years later, ecological economics. But there was a lot of resistance in North America. There really was, we were creating a new supply, but there was no demand in North America whatsoever. What was the word you used? Stonewalled. So beyond a few select places, there was nothing happening. So this third wave was really reflecting on this kind of gap between all these bright, brilliant people who we trained in that second wave at RPI and other places, but who kind of went elsewhere. They went to Europe. And in this third wave, to focus here in North America, the cause of so much of the world's problems, I'm just so pleased to see that we've created a group of like-minded folks, a group of folks who are going to become the heads of NGOs, the heads of governments, no pressure, the heads of new departments, and really kind of create that vision, but a more, not as much as we'd like, but a more inclusive vision that brings in a broader group of people that is starting to really lean into questions around justice and not just environmental sustainability. And I think this time around, you can correct me if I'm wrong, there's demand for what you all are teaching. I say that very hesitantly. I think the social movement now is in place. That wasn't so much before. I think there is a youth movement in particular that is demanding from their faculty, much like Josh and I did from our faculty at Cornell, to stop teaching us this bullshit. Excuse me. We need another. There are other ways, and it's not like we have to invent this from scratch either. So, I hate to sound like an economist, but you're the supply, and maybe the demand is there. So here we go. And this symposium is really a celebration of 6 years of this third wave. And I've seen such dramatic influence within our professional societies, within the cultures of our 3 universities, the effects that are happening now by planting subversive thinkers in places like the World Bank, places like the Nature Conservancy, places like the Bank of France. We're seeing the initial effects of this third wave. So this is just the beginning. Can't wait to watch what happens. So, should we start our speed talks? Yes? All right. So, I went last because... You want to switch over for me? Sure. Thank you. Perfect. Okay, so here's the rules of the game. We did not want to design a symposium where this is happening, right? Speeches and no interaction and a very kind of passive symposium. We wanted to design a more active symposium. But we also want to hear from all the great things that our students are involved with in their research. So these are speed talks, okay? 3 minutes, okay? 3-minute talks to plant some ideas, plant some seeds, give us a scope of what your work is about. And each of these, we'll do 3 rounds of this. Each round will last between 20 and 30 minutes. And then you're gonna have a nice 20, 25-minute discussion. Each of the 5 to 6 people in each round will go to a table, and you'll have an opportunity to sit and actually have a conversation, okay? So 3 minutes to plant some seeds, and then each person gets to have a conversation with all of us for 20 to 25 minutes. So as this is happening, please write your questions down, okay? Because you're gonna hear 5, 6 talks in a row, rapid fire. Write your questions down. There's some paper and pens on the table. There's Post-it notes. After the speed talk round concludes, you can join a table. You certainly are welcome to switch tables, okay? So you can start at one table, move to another. You're certainly welcome to write questions down, and if you didn't get to a table, you can hand those questions to your speaker and follow up at lunch and other times. But really the intention is to plant some seeds and have a conversation. It is being live streamed, as Peter noted. 3-minute time limits, table discussion, take notes, write questions, and let's get to work.